Woo! Good morning, Shannon. What is up?
Good morning. All right, switch.
So double coverage this morning in the San Antonio Express News on the Eyes of Texas. Both the columnist Mike Finger and the Longhorns beat writer Nick Moyle with a column and a story on the Eyes of Texas.
Well, and Mike, what does he mainly cover now? Because he used to be
Mike
here.
Finger, he used to be a Longhorns beat writer for the Express News, and now he's a columnist. So now he's, he writes a lot about the Longhorns, but now he kind of, Spurs Longhorns opinion column. Woo! So according to Fitbit, I got about 2 hours and 45 minutes of sleep last night. Sub 3.
Down at like 11 something.
Yeah, God. It's like I get home from those Spurs broadcasts. And it's like I can't sleep. It's like, all right, it's 11. I should sleep. All right, it's 11:30. I should sleep. All right, it's midnight. I should sleep. Steve Duraco, Tracy Bogert, Foam Foot 420. Anybody else who may be in here, welcome in. Good morning. Steve Duraco, the co-founder of the San Antonio Polar Bear Club. 39 degrees this morning, Steve Duraco in San Antonio. You might have to go take a dip. I think it went down to 38. $45 in Houston. Up 41 now in San Antonio. Or 39, actually. Woo! Got my up to the minute San Antonio app. What about Austin? Austin comes in at 37. 37 in Austin. Where I am going on vacation on Friday, Santa Fe, New Mexico, snow flurries and 28. Yeah, that's what I want. I want to go back into the snow because I haven't had enough snow and ice. It's supposed to be better later in the week. It's supposed to be like sunny and 57. Wes Perkins, good morning. All right, I need headphones. That's always a good thing. So, yeah, we'll see if the coffee this morning. 70 in Cancun. This is where I used to vacation when I used to go on airplanes. 81 and sunny later today. So if it weren't for the pandemic, that's where I'd be going. But now that Ted Cruz has ruined Cancun forever, now you go to Cancun and go, ooh, who are you, Ted Cruz? Woo, you elitist. You runaway deserter. I can't even go to Cancun anymore. Thank you, Ted Cruz. You ruined Cancun. And yeah, we got to get into that Creighton coach. My God. My God. Yes, Steve Duraco, I do need to connect with your sister. Yes, sirree, Bob. You made it to the midpoint of the week. It's all downhill from here. Easy peasy. Longhorns win. They're back, baby. Take that, Longhorn haters. They beat Iowa State. That's what I'm talking about. Longhorns in the news. We got lots to talk about when it comes to the Texas Longhorns as the Texas Tribune publishes a bunch of emails, including emails from well-heeled donors with their opinions on Texas football players who choose not to sing The Eyes of Texas. Man, this controversy is the gift that keeps on giving. We got a lot to talk about this morning. Welcome in. It is the Chris Duel Show, along with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Shannon, are you salty this morning?
I think I'm all right. We'll gauge it as the day goes.
Yeah.
I'm part of the water brigade today, and you just showed me the weather right now is 36 degrees, so I hope it jumps about 30 degrees before I'm outside for an hour.
I think it will. I'll check my trusty weather app. So yeah, in fact, we'll talk more about it a little bit later, but since you brought it up just out of the gate, talk to us about the big water event that's happening at the radio station in Austin today.
Yeah, still plenty of people without access to water, so you can come to the iHeart Austin Studios, 3601 South Congress, 11 to noon today. Just drive up, pop your trunk. We'll throw in a case of Jason Momoa's Mananalu water,
Woo!
which come in really cool cans, and cans that, by the way, you should recycle, and then they will be back on the shelves 60 days later after they've been recycled. So pretty cool program of water and delicious water at that.
Yeah, some of us dirt bags are still drinking water out of plastic bottles, which I'm holding up right now on Facebook Live.
Awful.
I'm moving into the can thing. By the way, I just pulled up Austin weather. Although it is 37 right now, high today 72. Sunny and that.
See, I can live with that.
My God, that's a big spread. That is, let me do my Holmes High School math. That is a 32 and 3. That is a 35-degree spread. So that's pretty big. So yeah, that'll be nice. So yeah, you've got the Eyes of Texas. We'll get into that. You got the Creighton coach stepping in it big time. Elon Musk wants to change the name of a Texas city to something very, very cool. Longhorns win. Spurs win. Vikings release tight end Kyle Rudolph. So much going on in the world of sports. And our soundscape stylist this morning, we always love having him. He is on loan from the Mike Taylor Show and the Sports Grind on Ticket 760 in San Antonio. He is a Rick Smith replicant, sort of, kind of, sort of. How you doing? Sam Freese, what is up, man?
Doing well. How are y'all doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm sleep deprived.
Except for the lack of sleep. Yeah.
Sometimes that's good though, because Fitbit says I slept 2 hours and 45 minutes last night. If you've got a Fitbit, it's got the little sleep function, tells you how much you actually slept. So, go ahead.
I'd say that we need to get you an Apple Watch, but I'm pretty sure when I text you, you're green, so you must have a Samsung.
No, I'm iPhone, whatever. I don't even know what that is. It is an iPhone. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm green. I don't know why I'm green, but I'm green. So
interesting.
Yeah, maybe someday I'll get an app. No, and so you feel even more tired when you see that in the morning. You wake up, it's another
because
day.
You have affirmation.
Yeah, there's the alarm. And if it would have lied to me, if it would have said, "Oh, you got 5 hours of sleep last night," I would be, "Oh, anytime I can get 5, that's beautiful." But then you look at it, you go, 2:45, my God. And one of the reasons there was a Spurs game last night, Spurs won. They beat the New York Knicks. They annihilated the New York Knicks 119-93, which is always beautiful when the Spurs can win in a blowout, so it's not a nail biter at the end. But and Shannon and Sam know this, and probably anybody in any job, when you get home from work, if you've had to use brain matter when you work, you come home, and I'm a bit wired. I can't just get home and go right to sleep. My body, for whatever reason, doesn't cooperate. So anyway, here I am. First world problems. Let's see. We are streaming live video on AM 1300 The Zone and Ticket 760's Facebook page. I see Luisa Alanis in there. She says, good morning. Anthony Del Toro, Clint Proctor, Michael Rodriguez, Steve Duraco, Wes Perkins, Tracy Bogert. Welcome in, everybody, on Facebook Live. If you're new to the show, on Facebook Live, you can not only interact with us live and in real time, but everybody else who is in there. There's usually very lively discussions on Facebook Live. And Shannon, I showed you before the show, I'm very old school. Translation, I'm very old. Get off my lawn. So I still read the actual newspaper some of you kids and your internets, I say it plural like George W. Bush does in Crawford, Texas. Some of you kids in your internets like to read, all your stories online, which I do as well, believe it or not. But this story involving the Texas Longhorns and the Eyes of Texas song, just when you thought maybe it might fade away, not necessarily. The Texas Tribune does a story yesterday. Among other things, it releases emails, some of which it claims are from high-powered Texas Longhorn donors who are saying very disparaging things about Texas Longhorn football players who have chosen not to or who have a problem singing the song The Eyes of Texas. And if you're new to the story for any reason, part of that is that the roots of that song apparently go back to minstrel shows in the early 1900s, and minstrel shows are not cool. So
the phrase of eyes of Texas comes straight from the eyes of the South are upon you.
Boom. Thank you. Yeah. All the more reason. And Shannon, you're an alum. I mean, you've got kind of the balance of, on one level, hey, it's tradition. We've been singing it for decades. And I know the vast majority of Texas Longhorn students, alums, players over the years sang it and had absolutely no idea about its roots. And as Sam mentions, the eyes of Texas with its roots of the eyes of the South are upon you. And, it is viewed, at least to have roots in racism. So you've got something that people have sung joyously at the end of football games and whenever they sang it, without having any idea that it might have questionable roots and might therefore be offensive. And now you've got kind of a new day in 2021 where there are specifically Longhorn football players who are finding it offensive. So this is, again, something that the university and the football program dealt with last year. Certainly after the Cotton Bowl, a number of players did not come out and sing the song. I know Sam Ellinger did. Tom Herman at the time said it is not required for football players. There was some uproar over that. And Herman's gone. Sark, when he came in, said, that's our song. We're going to sing that song. We're going to celebrate that song. Say again?
He said we'll be fired up to sing it.
Yeah. So how you feeling about this controversy on Wednesday morning, March 3rd, when it seems to have flared up again?
Well, I'm definitely in the boat of having grown up a Longhorn fan and singing it, not realizing just how racial the undertones of that song are. Obviously, it goes to the tune of I've been working on the railroad, and it kind of speaks for itself. But as far as where the song was kind of birthed and how it was kind of birthed and came to be, certainly didn't know that, which is in part why they've created the Eyes of Texas History Committee, which is supposed to release a review next week with all the facts. They're trying to create basically an educational platform around this. And I would almost suggest them creating a class for Texas. Every undergraduate that goes there has to take an undergraduate studies class. They're kind of random, but they are supposed to get you into a topic or subject that might make you uncomfortable or something you never thought you would be in. I, for one, took the drugs and alcohol class. We talked about it earlier. I got to meet Hollywood Henderson, who came and spoke there, that maybe they should just have a class that is required for undergraduates to, if you're going to come to this school, you need to know the history of it, because there's a lot of history, not just about the song, but about the school itself. That a lot of people, I think, need to be enlightened by, and changes that have already been made maybe brings up discussions of changes that need to be made, and this song kind of being in the center of it. I myself don't think it needs to go away, but I do think it needs to be put out there that yes, it did not come from a great place, but it doesn't represent what it used to. Let's let it represent the change and the growth that this university is going through. But for anyone who doesn't want to sing it, I think stand there with your team. For those that do, it's, everyone's big on tradition, and I think that would really hurt more people to not see that continue. But like the president said yesterday, those few donors that were, some of them even let their names stay in that article that came out where they sent emails to the university with disparaging comments about players in the university and the song and their desire to keep it the way it is, that they just really didn't care. They didn't like players speaking out. That is such a small percentage of alumni from the University of Texas, and there are over 540,000 alumni who donate to that school. So a really small percentage. They don't represent the university at large, but it certainly is not a good look to have those comments be made, one, and then be made public.
Yeah, and I hear you when I think you and Chris have both, they're disparaging comments. Some of the emails are flat racist. I mean, it's beyond disparaging.
Yeah, let me read one real quick, Sam, just to illustrate your point. A 1970 Texas graduate wrote, quote, "Less than 6% of our student body is black. The tail cannot be allowed to wag the dog. If they don't like it, they can go somewhere else." Ooh.
Yeah, there's another one from a 1986 grad, even more recently, where he absolutely refers to them as the blacks, and the blacks can leave the state if they don't like it here. That is, so to say we understand now the history of the song, we understand now, what it means, what it meant then, what it means to us now. Obviously, there's still some percent of the alumni of the fan base that when they sing that song, they know damn well they're singing an old minstrel song. They know damn well it's the eyes of Texas comes from the eyes of the South are upon you. They are perfectly fine singing that because they know the heritage, they know the history of it, and that's what they want to preserve. And those are the ones that really, I think.
How about we get rid of them?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I mean, how old are they? You said the guy was graduated in 1970.
Yeah,
but then the other guy graduated the year I was born. I mean, that's not even that long ago. It's I think it's less about. I think it's if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I have a problem with this song," I think the racist origins of it still affect me, still bother me. If your response to that student athlete is, then go to another school, that's awful. Yeah. That's terrible. If that's your go-to response. And I think that's more than anything, the big takeaway from seeing and reading these emails is no matter what the number is, no matter what the percent of alumni that feel this way, there are obviously some very strong emotions still tied to that song, and very strong emotions that come back to defending what seems to be defending the heritage of the song itself. And that's the thing. I believe you, Shannon. I think it's I want to think it's such a small percent of the alumni base, but if they're donating multi-millions of dollars and threatening to pull them because of this, that tells me that to some extent, decisions at the University of Texas are being driven by people with very, very racist views on the student athletes that are raising the millions of dollars on the fields of play for the university. That just doesn't feel like a right formula for how a university should make decisions.
Man. And this, Shannon, I had always heard this, but I'd never seen it written in print by a reporter. And Mike Finger of the San Antonio Express News, I showed Shannon the front page of the San Antonio Express News sports page this morning. Big banner headline, "Eyes Upon Texas." And two stories, actually one column written by Mike Finger, who used to be pretty much the Texas Longhorns beat writer for the San Antonio Express News. And then the other one is written by the guy who pretty much covers the Longhorns now for the San Antonio Express News. His name is Nick Moyle. But Mike Finger says in his column this morning, when Tom Herman, after the game in the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, said that it is not mandatory for Texas players to stay out there and sing the eyes of Texas, he says that led to, at least in part, contributed to the dismissal of Tom Herman. Now, I've heard fans saying, that was part of it, but from your perspective, Shannon, I mean, what was that factored in? Is one of the reasons that alums and big money donors that Sam Priest is talking about got angry with Tom Herman because he gave the players latitude as to whether or not they wanted to stick around and sing this song?
Some of them certainly were. I mean, Tom really tried to be a player's coach towards the end of his run. I think the issue was more not what he said, but the fact that they were trying to present a unified front while they're doing all this research, because they all want to say what they feel is the right thing to say, but they want to make sure they have all the background information. And the fact that he kind of separated himself from the rest of the athletics department in saying that, I think, did upset some higher ups. And that is not the one reason or the biggest reason as to why Tom Herman got fired. Look at his win-loss record.
Yeah, I was about to say, at the end of the day, the biggest reason is always going to be results on the field, and they just weren't there.
You win football games. You win a lot of football games. You're going to stick around. You don't win as many football games, especially in Texas, as are expected, and you will not be long for this world.
If Tom Herman had gone undefeated and won a national championship, there's not a single alumni that would care whether those kids sing the song or not.
It's a big point. That's a big point.
And this is our poll question today,
Yes,
by the way, to vote whether or not you think players should be required to sing The Eyes of Texas. As we all know now, at the end of games, the team huddles around the band, and the student section in the past have raised their horns in the air and sang the school song before heading into the locker room. If you want to jump in on our Facebook Live, it's also on YouTube. You can express your opinion in more than yes and no, and always leave a comment on our Twitter profiles as well.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this one along with everything else happening in the world of sports, NFL, free agency, quarterback, carousel, NBA, Spurs. Speaking of the Spurs, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs, Bill Schoening, going to join us at 8:06. Speaking of basketball, the Creighton coach, and again, there's a racial component to what this dude said. I think white people in general need to maybe take some classes. There's certain analogies you probably shouldn't make, especially as a basketball coach in 2021. Thank you, OJ. Quick break. Sam Priest is your Soundscape stylist. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. I'm Chris. We're with you till 9. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's the Chris Duel Show. Woo! That was lively.
Chris, you mentioned
Lively
live white people
segment.
there. Do you hear me?
Say
You
again.
have me? You mentioned white people there. Did you see last week when Coke was trending because they made all their employees take this like racial course or whatever, and it
No, I didn't see it.
said be less white?
Wow.
People there were screenshots of the slides of how to be less white and things.
Wow.
Like that. People were like,
I missed that last week.
it's like, yeah, but maybe you're missing the mark a little bit
Yeah.
because this is the whitest thing ever. Awful. And it looks like I just checked. As of right now, Greg McDermott's still with us.
Yeah, even I saw one of his assistants who is African American said he was deeply disturbed by that.
Right.
So yeah,
The best comment I've seen is that's not even a common phrase. You know,
I
we're all
know.
together. Let's put it all
Who
in
the
the
hell talks
hardwood.
about plantations in 2021? You're like going out of your way to make a bad analogy.
And that just to me screams that I use these terms and remarks in my free time, and so it's just kind of an instinct in my mind.
Yeah.
That I reach back there. And then the school says this is an internal thing, so any punishment will be handled in privacy.
It's a PR nightmare for your
If
school.
it was private, why did they have him release a statement? Because this wasn't a story, right? This happened in the locker room, and I didn't hear of it until he said he did that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Tracy Bogert says, technically, all the white people should leave. This was Mexico. Thank you. Good point, Tracy. Thank you.
That is funny.
That's right. Yes. Indigenous people. It was their land.
See, and that's where it gets so tricky of like, if we start getting rid of everything, then where are we?
Yeah.
the best we can do is to learn and move forward and do better and do right. But I'm also on the side of if they change the song, I'm not. Who cares? As long as it has a sick beat.
Yeah.
As long as they make it good.
Wouldn't it be a great PR move for college to bring in some well-known rappers to redo like a fight song?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah. Right. It's a great. Why would an 18-year-old kid care about a 110-year-old? Yeah, and Oregon with all their different helmets and jerseys, and yeah, it's a great point. Hector Gomez, good morning. I see Laura Burris in here. What is up, Laura? Okay, now why? I can't pull up the video. There it is on Facebook. Jesse Bratton, good morning. Jesse reads the newspaper as well. Julio Reyes, good morning. Michael Rodriguez. I got to Google Greg McDermott, the Creighton coach, see where this dude came from. From Iowa. Wow, he is the father of Doug McDermott. I didn't realize that. Okay, wow, I totally forgot about that. Now that you say that, I remember that, but did not remember that when this story broke. I was like, wow. From Iowa, born in Cascade, Iowa. He is born in 1964. So he's like 57 years old. Makes $1.4 million a year. That's a good gig, Greg. Hate to see you lose that job. Career winning percentage of .624, so he gets the job done. Big East Coach of the Year last year. Yep. Wow. Yeah, they've been ranked all year this year. Whoops, I want rankings. Where are the rankings? There they are. Creighton is 14, just above Texas. Creighton 14, Texas 15 in the AP. 12 in the coaches poll. Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back. Chris Duel Show along with Shannon Salty Sweeney on a Wednesday, March 3rd. Soundscape stylist Sam Freese. Lots going on in the world of sports. We just talked extensively, and I'm sure we'll hit it again because it's a big, big story, about the University of Texas and the Eyes of Texas song controversy. As Shannon mentioned, it is our poll question today. Should Texas Longhorn football players be required to sing the song The Eyes of Texas? And Shannon, you said something along the lines of, you know, maybe we should be required to take classes to better understand, you know, heritage, where our history led us from, in this case, the background of the song, The Eyes of Texas. Meanwhile, Creighton men's basketball coach, Greg McDermott, and as Sam Freese reminded me during the break, the father of Doug McDermott, who had a great career there and played under his dad, he has apologized, and he says in his apology, quote, "On February 27th, after an emotionally tough loss on the road, I addressed our student athletes and staff in a post-game locker room and used a terribly inappropriate analogy, you think, in making a point about staying together as a team despite the loss." And Shannon, you sent me this yesterday and called my attention to this. He said specifically, quote, "Guys, we got to stick together. We need both feet in. I need everybody to stay on the plantation. I can't have anybody leave the plantation." End quote. Shannon, I think we need a class pretty much for any coach that thinks the analogy of a plantation is a good idea in the year 2021 or any time. How do you feel about this one?
He not only said it once, he said it twice.
Oh,
And he not only said it, but he said staying on the plantation.
And it's not a common phrase, right? We're all in this together. Let's keep it on the hardwood. I believe in you. Those folks out there don't. We all got to stick together.
one game
So
at a
many
time.
ways
Yeah.
you could describe it.
Oh,
And in the back of his mind floating around is that word, and using it in that way. That to me says in your own time, you are using it and have conversations with people who probably are like-minded and using it. And you got caught because you slipped up and now you're apologizing. And it almost feels like they released this statement to try and get ahead of something, thinking, oh, they'll be like, oh, he's learned from the situation. You haven't learned, you got caught.
yeah.
Clearly you've been using this on your own time, or else it wouldn't just spurt up. Because again, not a common phrase.
Not at all.
Never heard that before.
And I don't know the demographic makeup of the Creighton basketball team. They have been ranked all year. In fact, I looked it up in the AP poll. They're ranked number 14 in the country right now.
They're always great at tournament time. They always peak at that right moment.
Just ahead of Texas. I got to believe there's a few, if not the majority of those players, as is often the case in college basketball and certainly the NBA, who are African American. I mean, in what situation as a white dude or dudette, would you use that term, as you mentioned, Shannon? It's like it never comes up, at least among, in my opinion, normal people as an analogy. But certainly, if you've got any, part of the people you're leading, whether it's a basketball team or a company or a grocery store or a post office or a plumbing company, and some of the people you are addressing are African American, and you're going to use plantation as an analogy. My God.
How about one of your assistant coaches being?
Yes.
It's all like Shannon said, it just screams of loose lips. Like he got too comfortable with something he says in other aspects of his life and accidentally let it slip in a context that he usually doesn't use it. It just the idea, the concept of telling a team we need to stick together, and then referencing slaves staying on the plantation, like that it's not even a good analogy. It's not even a motivating analogy, because
It's awful.
Yeah. Why would I want to?
Exactly.
Why would you say? Did he just watch a movie? Like, that's the only other thing that maybe, if that was a line in a movie and he's in the heat of a moment, but even that doesn't seem plausible to me.
Yeah, and I Googled Greg McDermott just to learn a little bit more about him. Head coach at Creighton. He makes $1.4 million a year. That's a good gig. You would think that you reach a station in life where you are making that level of money. You would think you would develop a little bit of common sense as to what is or isn't an offensive analogy. Then I thought, okay, where's he from? I mean, there's a certain stereotype that if you're a white person from the deep South, if you're maybe from Mississippi or if you're maybe from Alabama, and that may not be fair. I will say that, but Greg McDermott, born in Cascade, Iowa, he played college basketball at Northern Iowa, so he comes from the Midwest. That's just that is absolute basic common sense, if you ask me. And clearly, Greg McDermott is a smart man. He has risen to become one of the best college basketball coaches in the country. He was the Big East Coach of the Year just last year in 2020. He's got a winning percentage of .624. He's been to the NCAA tournament. His record in the tournament is 3-8, so he's been 8 times. So, man, I'm amazed. That just, especially, I mean, if you'd have said this in 1985, it would have still been wrong. But yeah, as we move forward, and here we just had this discussion about the eyes of Texas, as we evolve as a people and a culture, and even as we as white people evolve and realize some things are just offensive. I'm amazed that Greg McDermott would say this. I guess we need to give him credit for making the statement on the apology and not doubling down on it. I guess if he was a total clueless idiot who would say, "Hey, I see nothing wrong with that. I've been saying that all along. I see nothing." At least he didn't double down on it. He seems to, at least in the moment, perhaps after advice from people close to him, and maybe looking at that cool paycheck he gets from Creighton, has at least come clean and made this apology.
I just don't. I don't know. Maybe it's just the times we're living in that a simple online apology seems to be enough for some people, but clearly actions speak much louder. And what are you going to do to change yourself? What are you going to do to take that out of your vocabulary? So it not only doesn't happen again, but your players are back on your side. You can recruit players. You can bring players to school. I don't know why the school decided to really release their own statement by saying this is an internal issue and any reprimands will be handled internally and privately, when clearly he's put out this statement, school letterhead. It's now a public issue. I want to know what they're going to do to fix it, because we can't have people in such high power get away and continue to get away with things like that. We talked about who's the Woody Allen earlier this week.
Yeah.
We talked last week about, was it the a Marlins executive who was saying things about
the Mariners.
Mariners who players who speak different languages.
Yeah.
The beauty of sports is all of these people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, places around the world coming together and having one goal in mind. And when the leader of those young men is thinking in these ways and in these terms, not only in front of you, but Lord knows what he's thinking when he's not around you, we can't have that. We can't have that. And to continue to let people in that position, I mean, examples need to start to be made here. Well, I'm tired of reading those apologies every other day.
Yeah. And Sam brought up the assistant coach. Creighton assistant coach Terrence Rencher is African-American, and he said he was deeply hurt by McDermott's words. I mean, here's the guy you're in, he's your right-hand man. He's your assistant coach. I mean, what level of ignorance and cluelessness do you have to have if you're Greg McDermott in 2020 to know that using a plantation analogy is offensive? Wow.
He should have said in that statement that I'm stepping aside for the time being, this, that, and the other. I just don't get it. The whole thing is weird, from the fact that he did what he did, and then there's the release of the statement, the school statement. As of right now, I don't know what the uproar looks like, because this came out yesterday evening. So there's still some time, but I wouldn't be surprised if eventually people are like, no, we can't keep this guy around. I don't care what he gets paid. There's probably something in his contract doing something like this that they don't have to pay him if they part ways.
Let me ask you, and I certainly think that Greg McDermott has to in some way demonstrate that he's truly sensitive to this, and it's not just a statement and that he means well. But you have a lot of people now, Shannon, saying there is cancel culture out there today. Everybody wants to cancel somebody. Is this a case of cancel culture? I mean, Greg McDermott did issue an apology. Should we take him at his word? And I mean, what can he do to show remorse and to show that he's working on being a better, more conscious human being, short of losing his? I mean, he's very good at what he does. He's one of the best coaches in the country. He's got a $1.4 million a year gig. I mean, what can he do short of step aside for a while?
When I heard this and how he said it almost in the heat of a moment, he probably said it because it's something he's used to saying. We're on air, we're on radio, we have SEC rules, right? I can't go cursing whenever I feel like it. Outside of here, though, I mean, I'm not a sailor or nothing, but I use some 4-letter words.
I've dropped a few F-bombs over the years.
But I don't use them on air because I know better.
Yes.
And luckily we have a delay, so God forbid something ever slip from either of us.
Sam could maybe save us.
Sam would hopefully save us.
Yeah.
But even though I don't say them on air, but I do say them off air, those words don't make me a bad person off air. He's a racist.
Yeah.
He's a racist in his own time, and he's a racist in front of everybody. That's, to me, is the difference between someone saying, I'm going to cancel her because she let a bad word slip on air. Well, you say those words too. This guy's a racist. And he's clearly a racist behind the scenes. That is worth saying, no more of you, sir. We've had enough. Let someone else step in this role. Because, like, we have the coaches here all the time, right? There's so many great coaches out there who just aren't given an opportunity. They're never going to get the opportunity if you allow these kind of people to stay in the position of power that they're in. And let them get away with these kind of things over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, holding people accountable for racist actions is not cancel culture. That's accountability for a terrible act. I mean, it doesn't feel... I mean, according to the report, it sounds like the players were given some level of decision or decided amongst themselves that they didn't want him to step aside, because in the assistant coach's statement that he put out, he said, the players have decided to continue towards our goal with our head coach on the sidelines, and I'm going to support the players. He stopped very short of saying, I'm going to support our head coach. He said, I'm going to support the players' decision to continue to being led by him. So I think at the end of the day, if the players still want him there, I think he's probably still going to stay, but that still doesn't mean that he doesn't need to find other ways to show some level of accountability and remorse and growth and progress.
Yeah. And the big irony is, to me, you would use a term like this and an analogy like this, and it is racist. I agree with that, Shannon. And it is in a sport that is dominated overwhelmingly. The players are African American. And I mean, this guy's 57 years old, and you haven't reached a level of sensitivity yet. And your lead assistant coach is African American, and most of your players are, and most of the players on opposing teams are, and it's 2021, and you haven't realized that ain't cool. Wow. Greg McDermott. It'd be interesting to see how that continues to play out as we move in. It's March, man. We're going to move into the tournament soon. Quick break, sports update, lots more coming at you. Shannon's salty shakedown coming up in the 7 o'clock hour as well on the Chris Duel Show. Coffee infusion number 2 is coming. As I pay for my 2 hours and 45 minutes of sleep, I'll be back. I'm going to wear my mask, Greg Abbott. Sorry, Greg Abbott. I believe in science. Greg Abbott says, Texans have mastered protecting themselves from the... Nobody has mastered crap, Greg Abbott. Dirtbag. I'll be back. Beth Settle, good morning. Thank you for the alien emoji. Yeah, Wes Perkins getting the win last night on the back-to-back was a big deal. Let's see. Speaking of Spurs, we will have the great Bill Schoening in 1 hour at about 8:06. It's interesting. Let's do that. Wes Perkins says the family and I are doing Palo Duro Canyon during the break. Very cool, Wes. We are headed to Santa Fe, New Mexico on Friday, where they stop in Roswell to see if we see any aliens. Roswell's on the way to Santa Fe. I've never been to Roswell. I've never been to Santa Fe. Woo! Here we come.
This is the Chris Duel Show.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side, yeah.
Now, Chris Duel.
It is midweek. It is Wednesday, March 3rd. Longhorns men's basketball team wins last night. Spurs win last night. Spurs beat the New York Knicks 119-93. One of the things that is significant about that Spurs win is it was the second night of a back-to-back. It's the first time this year the Spurs have won on the second night of a back-to-back. I believe, were 0-5 going into last night, and they've got 11 of those. The second half of the season for the Spurs is really a grueling schedule. 40 games in 68 nights. 11 of them are back-to-back. So if the Spurs want to continue to play well and be in a good position, and they are right now. Currently, they're in the number 5 position in the Western Conference. They're going to have to start finding a way to win on the second night of back-to-backs because there's 11 of them coming up in the second half of the season. Coming up in about an hour, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs, Bill Schoening, former voice of the Texas Longhorns, Bill Schoening. He will join us at about 8:06. Which is a beautiful thing. Shannon Salty Sweeney, Longhorns beat Iowa State last night. You feel better about the Longhorns this morning?
I feel the same. It's one of the games they should have won. Did they play better all around? Sure. But still a ton of turnovers. Those kind of wild passes that go out of bounds on the offensive end. I still don't understand those because better teams are going to take advantage of those kind of mistakes. where Iowa State just isn't one of those better teams. So going into the tournament, they still have a lot of work to do, but definitely good to see a win last night.
Now, I heard somebody say this morning, Selection Sunday is a week and a half away.
Is that right?
That's crazy. And it's March. I guess that makes total sense. March Madness. I'm trying to pull up. So the Longhorn, yet 2 games left in the regular season that I see on the Longhorn schedule at Oklahoma and at TCU. And then I guess it's Big 12 tournament time.
Yeah. And of those 2 games, they should be able to beat Oklahoma, whether or not they will. We'll see.
Number 16 currently.
TCU, one of the worst teams in the Big 12, though. That one should be marked a dub. That would be a disappointment if that wasn't a dub. You just go ahead and fire Shocker right there for all I care. Take somebody else in the tournament.
You are so quick to pull the trigger on Shocker.
Done. You should have seen me last night. I was watching the game, and he had on this mask that said Texas Fight. And I was trying to take a picture of it, but when I took a picture, because it was a picture from my TV screen, it made the mask look more burnt orange, but it was very Oklahoma State. And I was like, who gave him this off-brand? This is not Texas approved. Jerry Jones is going to need to send a cease and desist to whoever's making this. That is not burnt orange. How dare you, sir?
Now, at least he was wearing a mask, as we heard from Governor Greg Abbott yesterday in the state of Texas. We are going to open up Texas 100% and no mask mandate anymore in Texas. Yeehaw! What could possibly go wrong?
Personally, I'm not one to stop wearing a mask yet. I mean, I'm nowhere close to getting the vaccine. I'm so far down on the list, but I can already foresee myself, maybe in the summer when masks aren't really required, like where some stores are like, oh, you don't need mask. When everyone's vaccinated, things like that. But there will still be those few stores that do still require it. It's going to be like I don't know if they do it in San Antonio, but here in Austin, there was a bag ban. So you have to bring your own bags everywhere. And it took a while for stores to then create these recyclable bags so that you could get bags in the store, switch to paper or whatever. But I was always like going into stores not knowing if I looked like an idiot because I have to carry around all of my stuff as I make my way to my car and I don't drop anything, or if I look like an idiot because I'm here with a bag and I don't need to be. That's going to be me with the mask. Just not knowing. Better safe than sorry. But will I make trots back to the car to grab a mask? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's required of me.
Well,
don't be Karen.
Basic physics, just, a mask is a barrier over your nose and mouth. So, I mean, just basic understanding of physics and science and filters will tell you that, less of your droplets are going to be going out into the environment and fewer of any droplets or foreign, maybe viruses that are in the environment might come through your mask. I mean, maybe they'll make it in, maybe they won't.
Yeah.
But I just, on the heels of the winter disaster where the grid went down and so many people lost power and water went bad for so many people.
Changing the subject.
Yes.
That's all they're doing.
I really think that's part of it. It's like, whoa, let's make some news here. And I get it economically. I am all for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I know people are hurting. I know businesses are hurting.
I know the great time to reopen during spring break.
Yeah. Boom. There it is. Yeah. I was listening to you and Mike Taylor yesterday, Sam Freese, and you guys were talking about the fact spring break is like coming. It's here next week for most people, and let's open up Texas. And I get that. And I think you could have even done that. I think Governor Greg Abbott could have even said, you know what? We're going to open up Texas 100%. However, I want to tell you that even though I will make masks optional, he still could have done it and said, but let me show you. I'm going to wear my mask because science and medicine and experts and epidemiologists say this is effective. So I strongly encourage old Texans to keep wearing your mask. He could have done everything he did, but still deliver a message of science and medicine and a message that ultimately would have saved lives. And I think the way he delivered this message, the bottom line for a lot of people don't pay close attention. They hear what they hear from other people, and what they're going to hear from other people is, whoa, Texas is open up 100%. and you don't have to wear masks anymore. That's what a lot of people are going to hear in this state, and that's a deadly message.
Well, at least you do have to wear masks to go to HEB, so kudos to them. I always think about that when I'm there, and like specifically the produce section, where typically people have to like touch, they want to touch and feel the produce, but now it's like roulette now when you're in the produce section because you don't want to be putting something back that you just touched all over.
Yeah.
Or egg roulette.
And you bring up HEB, they're going to stop requiring people to wear a mask next week when all of this rolls out. They're rolling back their mask requirement policy along with it, because that's the thing. The governor's order, a business can still require mask if they so choose, and it's up to them to enforce their rules at that point. So it puts all of the onus on the store owner. If they still want to require masks, they have to, try to enforce it at their doors. And HEB has decided, all of our employees, all of HEB's employees, all of our vendors, everything that we can control, we're still going to require a mask, but they're not going to require people coming in. And the other thing about wearing a mask versus getting the vaccine or any of that, we still don't even know if getting the vaccine it prevents you from passing it along to others. It's the CDC is, and granted, the CDC has been wrong about a lot over the last 14 months, but they're still our greatest asset of wisdom when it comes to this virus. And they're specifically saying, just because you get the vaccine, just because you get both shots, doesn't mean you should stop wearing the mask, because they don't know if that prevents you from spreading it. All they know is that prevents you from getting the nearly eliminates all chance of a fatal reaction if you do catch the virus. It just basically all that vaccine's doing is limiting the side effects if you catch it. It doesn't mean you're 100% immune to it or immune to spreading it to others. And that's the thing that scares me the most with this mask mandate rolling back. First of all, there's only 6.5% of us that have even gotten the damn vaccine. We're not even at 1/10 of us that have it. And even after we get it, science shows us we just should still wear the mask regardless. And it just feels like, it feels like you said, Shannon, I don't know when I'm going to get the vaccine. And even when I do, it just feels like we're going to completely disregard any science along the way, because if we get that vaccine, it just feels like everything will be normal at that point. And I think we're still quite a bit of ways from the goal line there.
Well, I know this just came out yesterday, but as we know, the women's NCAA tournament is heading to San Antonio in the Central Texas area. Every single team, the first week of this kind of rolling out, I would hope that teams would still instruct their players to practice, social distancing and wearing masks, but they can only control what they can control. And Lord help us if there's people that show up to these hotels or try to go to these games that just refuse. Now that everything's open, masks are no longer required by the state.
And there's going to be people like that. There's going to be Karens out there. And what is the male equivalent of? Is it a Ken? Have we just said?
I think it was a Ken. Yeah,
it was a Ken. There's going to be Karens and Kens out there. And again, the message they're going to hear is Texas is 100% open, which with masks I can certainly understand and live with. But the message they're going to hear is you don't have to wear a mask anymore. That's the messages. So there are going to be people. Even if there are businesses, and I find it questionable that HEB is going to rescind the mask requirement. I love HEB, and I'm a big fan of what they do, and I support them. But I wish they would set an example and say, we still kind of believe in science and medicine, and we're going to ask you to wear a mask in here. There's still going to be people going into businesses that are asking you to please wear a mask and say, hey, man, it's my right. I'm a Texan. I don't have to wear a mask anymore. And I just, when I was a kid, I saw Apollo 11 land on the moon, and I'm a big believer in science, and I'm now a believer in medicine, and I'm a believer in experts, and the vast majority of doctors and epidemiologists. And as Sam says, the CDC doesn't know for sure, and there's still a lot of questions about this virus, and the virus is still mutating, and there are variants of the virus. And so as we continue to get these vaccines, there's at least two series. There's a Great Britain strain of it. There's an African version that is now out there.
Earlier this week, before Abbott made his order, every single known strain that we know of in the world was found in Houston.
Oh man!
So yeah.
I just think there was a better way to go about it, and I'm sorry that.
And on Texas Independence Day too.
On Texas.
Well,
Independence
again,
Day.
I mean, if Abbott's good at anything, it's recovering his PR image. I mean, what a better way to celebrate Texas Independence Day than giving us our freedom back, quote unquote. I do think the 100% open, like when it comes, I think it's a very different conversation when it comes to, okay, 100% capacity at a restaurant versus 100% capacity at a Dallas Stars game, because I can guarantee you, as much as that organization needs money and as much as they have been outspoken about their differences when it comes to mask mandates or crowd capacity mandates or anything like that, you're going to see a max capacity crowd inside that arena before the summer. I mean, that's I think we are very I think they're going to be the first organization in the state that opens up a full max capacity crowd for a sporting event. And so that, I think it's a very different conversation when we're talking about a 60 to 80 person capacity restaurant versus a 16 to 18,000 capacity crowd, because if we're 100% open, the Stars and or the AAC up there would have their choice at this point, and I think they're going to choose very quickly to try to recover a bunch of the revenue they're losing with every home game. And that's where I think we're going to start to see instant results, or some kind of data we can instantly evaluate and judge and see how this decision is going to play out. Because I think those are the events that really make me nervous. Baseball season starting back up. What are the Astros and Rangers going to do with crowd sizes? Those are the ones that tend to make me way more nervous about hearing things are 100% open again.
Well, and you mentioned sporting events, Sam. We have heard from scientists and doctors and epidemiologists that there's a difference between outdoors and indoors. So certainly an outdoor stadium would, based on science we're hearing, be a bit less of a risk than indoors. And as sporting venues open up, I know the Spurs, starting on March 12th, they're going to allow 3,200 people into the AT&T Center. In fact, this tomorrow night, Thursday night, they're going to bring in 1,000 first responders. But even on March 12th, in the second half of the season, when they bring in the 3,200, you're going to get your temperature checked at the door. They're going to ask you to wear a mask. They're going to have you fill out a questionnaire, and they're going to do something where you have to get like a health card where you're, at least answering questions and, declaring that you haven't had symptoms. So I think you can do both. I think you can begin to open up and yet still acknowledge that there's a pandemic that is dangerous, that is killing people. So therefore, we're going to do things like take temperatures. We're going to do things like ask you questions. We're going to do things like raise your consciousness as a consumer coming into our business about the risks during this pandemic. And I just think that that's good common sense.
I agree. I got an email last night that was an announcement that the MLB has pushed back the start time for the AAA season. So they're losing about 22 games. But the idea is that more people will be vaccinated, giving more time for those numbers to continue to go down as vaccinations go up, so that we can enjoy sports in the way we are accustomed to. But that now paired with this news, I'm almost like, thank goodness they pushed it back, because we can get more vaccines, because now you're going to have people showing up who are going to feel like they don't need to wear a mask for whatever reason. Maybe they have the shot, but who's ever sitting right next to them might not have the shot. And again, like Sam said, we just don't know what the shot really does until we've all really had it and it's had time to be out there. I just don't like the timing of this. I don't think it's the right time.
Well, and you had President Biden yesterday saying that by May, there will be enough vaccine in this country for every adult to get the vaccine. Now, there's a difference between having it and getting it into the arms of Americans, but hopefully things are working out more efficiently. You guys were talking about the vaccine. I haven't had it yet because I'm not eligible yet, but yesterday, my mom, who is 97, I drove her to the Alamo Dome yesterday. I was amazed at how efficient everything was. You go down, you get in the parking lot, you don't leave your car. They come by, they check the paperwork. You've got a QR code on your phone that identifies who you are. They check you out. They make sure you're ready to go. Then they take you to another station where she got the vaccine. And then you go to another station where you have to wait about 15 minutes. Then they make sure that you don't have an immediate reaction to the vaccine, because I guess there is a small percentage of people who have that. And if you do, they want to be able to take care of you. But you mentioned the timing, Shannon. And again, going back to what Governor Greg Abbott announced yesterday, I think he could have done everything he did, but still announced it with an elevated consciousness and reminding people that there is still a pandemic. There are still thousands of Texans who are dying from this. There are clearly hundreds of thousands. We're over like 515,000 Americans who have died from this pandemic. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is this vaccine that people are getting. And if we believe the president, then by May, we're going to have enough vaccine for all adults to get it. So I agree with you. I think timing is everything. And I think we're so close. This is March. May is 2 months away. And I think if we behaved ourselves, we could have a relatively, at least certainly compared to 2020 and certainly compared to right now, I think we could have a relatively normal summer, which would be so much nicer.
I want to go on vacation so bad.
All right. Coming up, Shannon's Salty Shakedown. We'll also tell you what happened on this day in sports history, sports birthdays. We will talk San Antonio Spurs, NBA. We grab Bill Schoening, given his Longhorn roots as the longtime voice of the Texas Longhorns. We'll talk a little Longhorns with Bill Schoening as well. Bill Schoening, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs, going to join us just after 8 o'clock. Lots to talk about. NFL, we haven't talked to NFL football or Cowboys or Dak yet, and we are now 6 days away from the deadline to either put a franchise tag on Dak or not. We'll get into that as well. She is Shannon Salty Sweeney. He is the biggest Puma, Sam Freese. I'm Chris. Thanks for hanging out with us. You're listening to The Chris Duel Show. Hey, Ralph, I see what you wrote here. And in the middle of the segment, I can't read and talk at the same time, but I can now read what you wrote. Ralph Balderas writes, "Good morning, everyone. Been a while since I've been on, but I just tuned in and have to chime in on the issue. I just lost my uncle Thanksgiving, my mom in January, and my fiance 2 weeks ago." Ralph, man, I'm so sorry. I can't begin to imagine what you were going through, sir. They got COVID, then they got over it. We have no science on it yet, so we don't know if COVID caused it. Wow, that's cool. I will do that. I'm surprised we didn't get shut up. Yeah. Yeah, Shannon, I don't know if you heard Sam. We got a caller said, thank you for your responsible takes on this big story. So that's nice. Yeah, you never know what you're going to get in this climate.
It's always a fine line.
Yeah. I just, it sucks that this has been politicized. It's like if you wear a mask, you're a snowflake. That's such bullshit. And it ticks me off. Anyway, back to Ralph. Ralph, sorry, I'm in the middle of what you wrote. We have no science on it yet, so we don't know if COVID caused it. My point is, don't take a chance. Thank you. Ralph, you make such a huge... There are precautions. They told us this from the get-go. Social distance, stay at least 6 feet away from people. I prefer to stay 20 feet away from people. Wear a mask, and hygiene. Wash your hands as often as possible. You make a great point. My point is, don't take a chance, because you never know what might happen now or how it will affect you later. Because when it's too late, you can't bring them back. Then you start crying because you should have. Thank you, Ralph. And God bless you and your family. You know, I can't imagine what you are going through, what you have gone through, and what those you've lost have gone through. Jason Paniagua, good morning. Carl Fisher, good morning. Michelle Johnson from Marysville, Kansas, good morning. I'm just amazed that we live in such an anti-science culture in 2021 when we were all about science and technology as a nation and went to the freaking moon. All right. Fun. Wow, Jason, I'm sorry to hear that about your dad. My God. And, you know, these people who either haven't lost anybody or don't know anybody who has lost somebody. You know, I had somebody say to me, on social media last week, hey, if masks work, how come people are still dying from COVID? It's like, are you an absolute idiot? Can you not see cause and effect? Did you not take basic science when you were in school? Anthony Del Toro, who he writes, I buried a gentleman in my line of work last week who did have underlying conditions, but was told by his doctor he had 20 to 30 years, which would put him in his 80s. But 4 weeks after that appointment, he got COVID and passed away. So please wear your mask, people. I bury people every other day who are COVID related. Yeah. God, it's just mind numbing and so very sad. And I'm just amazed at the people who want to deny it and the people who think it's a political thing. All right. Eddie writes, why would you ignore the advice of top educated medical experts and scientists? Shaking my head. This has nothing to do with freedom. There's logic behind this, but until they lose a family member like I did, Eddie, I'm sorry you did as well, like I did, then you will not truly understand. Only 7% of Texas has received the vaccine from what I'm reading. Hospitals better prepare themselves for another huge wave. Eddie, so I'm so sorry. And for anybody out there who's lost somebody to this, and those numbers will continue to grow, sadly. Yes, sir. Yeah. Oh, cool. Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Chris Duel Show, welcome back. I'm Chris, along with Shannon Salty Sweeney, moments away from your daily Salty Shakedown. Sam Freese is your soundscape stylist, on loan from the Mike Taylor Show and the Sports Grind. If you listen to Ticket 760 in San Antonio, you'll hear Sam on board with the Sports Grind at 2 and the Mike Taylor Show at 4. Let's do Bill Schoening, if you're just tuning in. Bill Schoening, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs, going to join us just after 8 o'clock as we are with you until 9 o'clock this morning. And we appreciate your hanging out with us this morning and whenever you do. Right now, before we get to the Salty Shakedown, let's take a look at this day in sports history. March 3rd, 1875. The first recorded hockey game was played in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Of course it was in Canada. That's what they do. They play hockey. On this day in 1966, yesterday was the anniversary of Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game in 1962. Well, on this day in 1966, Wilt Chamberlain of the Philadelphia 76ers, all he did was score 62 points, a measly 62 points, and pulled down 37 rebounds. He was 62 and 37, Wilt. Nice double-double as the 76ers beat the San Francisco Warriors 135 to 125. On this day in 1974, boxer George Foreman knocked out Ken Norton. Later in that year, in the fall, George Foreman would be knocked out by Muhammad Ali and Zaire. So the George Foreman love train was going to come to an abrupt end later in the fall of 1974. And finally, on this day in 1975, Billy Shoemaker became the first jockey to win $100 million. And that was in 1975. He had all of those winnings by 1985. So Billy Shoemaker was quite the jockey. That is this day in sports history. And we move on to sports birthdays for March 3rd. This day in 1958, San Antonio Spurs legend, his number is up in the rafters at the AT&T Center. He's also a Texas Longhorn, Johnny Moore, born this day in 1958. This was a good day in 1962. You had two amazing athletes born on this day in 1962, Herschel Walker and Jackie Joyner Kersey. Herschel Walker, of course, Heisman Trophy winner, College Football Hall of Fame, won the Heisman out of Georgia in 1982. USFL, played for Donald Trump in the USFL with the New Jersey Generals. Later, the Minnesota Vikings, the Dallas Cowboys. Herschel Walker was born in Wrightsville, Georgia. Jackie Joyner Kersey, Olympic gold medalist in 1988 and 1992 in track and field. She was born in East St. Louis, Illinois. Both Herschel and Jackie Joyner Kersey born on this day in 1962. And born on this day in 1998, two-time NBA All-Star for the Boston Celtics and one of the new true stars of the NBA, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum born this day in 1998 in St. Louis, Missouri. Happy birthday to them, and happy birthday to you if it is your birthday on March 3rd. And now, boys and girls, friends, Romans, countrymen, it's the moment we've been waiting for. Time for the salty shakedown.
Yes, well, thank you, sir, for those birthdays. Jason Tatum, remember, is now a starter in this year's All-Star game thanks to Kevin Durant's hamstring. And, of course, that draft will be tomorrow night. All right, salty shakedown time. I gave you a little insider tidbit last week on Johnny Manziel, why he didn't play in his most recent game with his team, because he had emergency dental surgery. What that surgery was remains to be seen. But he was recently on Chris Long's podcast, Greenlight, where he announced his new goal in life. He wants to be a professional golfer. He's been playing his entire life. He's recently been more active, a pretty good scratch golfer, apparently, over in Scottsdale, Arizona. Says he's giving himself 12 years to make a PGA Tour event. I know he's a great athlete, and you can set your mind to do something, and you're that kind of athlete. You could probably achieve a pretty high level. But I just, we've seen Tony Romo, right? He's dabbled. He's even played in a couple events. Didn't fare very well. I just don't see Johnny playing golf. He just doesn't have the stature. Like, even the look of Johnny Manziel does not scream golfer to me.
Now, first of all, how much of that is your anti-Aggie bias? Is your anti-Aggie bias?
Me not seeing him play. I mean, just like the look. Like, not that I have anything against tattoos or anything, but that just generally in golf, you just don't. I know we're kind of coming into a new wave. Maybe that'll change soon. But the PGA is so uptight. You must wear pants. You must, abide by these rules. I just don't see him being able to stick to those things. I think he'd definitely be someone you tune in and see. Should he make it to that event, just to see what would happen. But I just don't know. 12 years too. I don't know why that particular number wasn't in the back of his mind. What's that? 2033?
Yeah.
Are we tuning in 2033 to watch Johnny play golf?
Maybe. Yeah, you bring up Tony Romo. We brought this up with Tiger Woods. We don't know if Tiger will ever make it back and play any kind of golf again. We certainly hope so. But we brought up, like these fun celebrity matches with Phil Mickelson. You bring up Tony Romo. I would love to see a match with Johnny Manziel and Tony Romo, and why not pair them with Tiger Woods when he recovers, let's hope, and Phil Mickelson. That would be fun. It would be interesting to see who's the better golfer down the line. I would imagine it's Tony Romo right now, but if Johnny can get it together, that'd be a fun one to watch. I'd tune in for that.
Yeah, what is the tournament in July where it's the celebrity pairings, and I love those, and we usually get like Aaron Rodgers and Steph Curry typically doing. So there's a lot of very high profile athletes as well as entertainers that enjoy the game. And I agree with you. Seeing something like Phil and Tiger with Tony and Johnny, especially after Johnny's kind of had time to get his game up, but also reflect. I think he'd be more open and reflecting on his football career with guys like that rather than a typical one-on-one media sesh. But I guess be on the lookout for Johnny's golf game. 12-year countdown starts now for the PGA Tour event. All right, moving on to the NBA. Zion Williamson, the big man, the guy who's supposed to be the next LeBron-like figure, finally has his own Jordan shoe. Of course, he signed that deal in 2019, 5 years, $75 million, the biggest rookie contract for a shoe deal ever. We all remember that big game, Duke versus UNC, when he was driving and took a sidestep and the Nike shoe split right there on the court. It's probably the worst thing to happen to Nike in a long, long time. He signs with Jordan, of course, which is an extension of Nike, but he's finally got his new shoe. There's going to be multiple colorways. The shoe, which will be released in April, currently features his own personal logo, a ZW on the tongue, of course, the Jordan logo on the heel. And the shoe itself kind of reminds me of the NBA's, the NFL the last couple of years, the way they've been designing their crucial catch gear, where it's almost like the rainbow of all the colors for the different types of cancer. So it's a good looking shoe. Hopefully, he plays in it and it goes well for him, right? And that he sells out, because $75 million for a 5-year shoe deal, and now it's 2021, and he's just now getting his first shoe. I don't know that he's made quite the impact people hope for. Of course, he started off his career with an injury. But we'll see how that goes. Are you a big shoe guy, Chris?
I'm not.
I've never seen your feet, so I don't know. I don't know what you're doing.
I am wearing some Converse. This is how old school I am. I'll show you on Facebook Live. Can you see that? The Converse?
Okay.
Chuck Taylor.
So you're playing basketball in what?
Chuck Taylor Converse All Stars. Very, very old school.
Is that your go-to pair?
That is my go-to pair.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I'm not a big shoe guy. Now, Sam Freeze, let's ask Sam, because Sam is a big-time basketball player. Have you ever gotten into the shoe world? Have you ever bought Jordans? Are you into that?
Yeah, I've got a couple of pairs of Jordans that sit in shoe boxes in a closet, probably get worn twice a year. But I wouldn't say I'm, I have a buddy who literally has over 200 pairs of, like, he's a collector.
My God.
But it's the equivalent of, he doesn't wear any of them, and it's just a collection. And he makes for some pretty cool showcase pieces when he gets a real unique pair, a real colorful pair. I'd say I'm somewhere in between owning 200 pairs and really being a collector and wearing Converse All-Star, Chuck Taylor All-Star. I'm probably I wear Adidas Gazelles every day, just a pair of, little slip-on pair of Adidas. So the day-to-day shoes I don't care much about, but I can understand someone wanting to collect, especially a first signature shoe from a player like Zion. Those are going to be hot commodities.
I love shoes. I wish I could afford to. I'm a bargain hunter in general. I never pay full price. So the idea for some of these, specifically Jordan shoe prices, are insane. Like you, Sam, I'm a big Adidas wearer. I have a pair of shoes I got over a year ago now that I've yet to wear, because they're white, completely white, except for either the NMDs, except for the bottom boost part, which is a bright orange. And also, I don't ever see anybody. And I'm like, I want people to see my cool shoes. So I'm saving them until there's some life back in this office. But I'm with you on that. I don't know how people spend so much money on shoes, especially if they're not going to wear them. Because eventually I will wear my shoes. But right now I stick to my everyday Adidas Boost, and they fit me perfectly and comfortably, and I enjoy them so much. They got a lot of miles on them. They've seen the world. All right, moving on to Alvin Kamara. He's making headlines, just as Drew Brees is making headlines for the Saints for his will he, won't he. Alvin Kamara has been on the slopes this week, snowboarding, and showing off his moves. He was doing some tricks until he wasn't, because he hit the deck. Sliding down. Saints fans are not pleased, and he shared the video of him sliding down, followed by, "We're back at it again tomorrow." Don't most high-profile athletes have these stipulations in their contract where they're not supposed to be doing extreme sports and things like that? I know a couple years ago, before Pat Mahomes signed his major deal with Kansas City, there were videos of him slam dunking, doing a lot of basketball tricks, and the Chiefs were like, "Hey, please don't. Please stop. You are our franchise player. You are our future Hall of Famer. We need you to cut that out, because we can't have an injured guy, especially an injury for, what'd you do? Oh, I was trying to do a cool new dunk with trampoline, and it just didn't go so well." Alvin Kamara on the slopes, smart move, an okay move. Are you okay with it? They're allowed to have a little fun, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, and wasn't it Ben Roethlisberger who many years ago had a motorcycle accident, and that's written in his contract? You think about it, at the level of money that Alvin Kamara is making, and
a few years without.
Right. Well, and a running back, their their shelf life in the NFL is less than other players typically, you got to wonder. But again, at the same time, you probably think you're indestructible. You've been a high performance athlete all of your adult life and your teenage life, and now you're one of the best athletes in the world. You're making millions of dollars. You want to have fun. You like adrenaline. So, I mean, I kind of see the desire to do it, but I think common sense would dictate you got to be careful.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, no. Your take, Sam.
I just saw the video for the first time. It's not like he's shredding a half pipe or he's in the.
No, he's doing like almost a Healy almost.
Yeah, I mean, he's just snowboarding. Like, I guess that if he was out there trying to like shred up the ski park or trying to grind rails or actually getting air, I could understand some concern. But we still have to let these guys live their lives. I mean, it's the off season for him. I know skiing is dangerous, but I mean, I don't necessarily see the big concern if a guy like he's still got to be able to live his life a little bit. And if he enjoys snowboarding, I think he should probably still be allowed to do it. It doesn't feel like even the Ben Roethlisberger motorcycle thing to me, like I don't think you can control the athletes' lives that way. That's always bothered me. And I understand Roethlisberger was trying to do wheelies and stoppies in a parking lot. Like that's very, very different. If your daily commute, you want to take a motorcycle, I kind of think you should still be allowed to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to, I mean, you just think those two things, snowboarding or riding a motorcycle, to be a young person and an athlete and a multimillionaire and say you can't ride a motorcycle or you can't be snowboarding or snow skiing even, it is kind of hard to limit their life. And then they're going to say, so what? I can't do that till I'm 35 or 38 and retire?
Well, and you're going to sign a 6-year contract with the team and they're going to cut you after 2 seasons. So how much loyalty do they really have? Like you should, I'm fully dying on this mountain. I think it's ridiculous that people are upset about Alvin Kamara, baby, taking a bunny hill, a bunny slope on a snowboard. It's not even that crazy. It's not even that bad of a fall.
It's also so interesting that they have these stipulations or these desires of you not to participate in things such as snowboarding or skiing or dunking in crazy ways, because for the job that you do is to go as fast as you can to run into brick walls time and time again. Don't injure yourself out there because we need you to injure. Because we need you to do that here.
Yeah, we need you for every time you get hit. It's like a car accident at 30 miles an hour. Yeah, we need you to save all of that pain for your body for our enjoyment.
Our insurance plan isn't meant for your free time.
Exactly.
But Sam, if you're the owner of the New Orleans Saints, I guess your name would be Benson, and you're paying millions of dollars to Alvin Kamara, and then he does tear up his ankle or his knee snowboarding, and I mean, are you still wanting to pay him millions of dollars?
No, I think there should be. I mean, I think there should be some bit of accountability for the player in that situation. I think I'm not necessarily. I mean, the contracts aren't guaranteed, so it doesn't matter. I'm not necessarily saying the players should be able to do what they want without repercussions. If he had torn an ACL and he was going to be out all next season, he shouldn't get paid. He did that. Out like he made that choice, right? But I to all out 100% ban it. That just doesn't feel. That doesn't feel like an America I want to live in. I don't want to ever have the prospect of a job telling me I can't go snowboarding.
Unless that job was paying me millions of dollars, I'd say, okay, I'll play SSX Tricky at home on my GameCube. I'll do that instead. I'll get all my fix. For however many years you've signed me for.
Okay, what about skydiving? What if Alvin Kamara loved skydiving? Would that be cool?
I mean, skiing is probably more dangerous for him than skydiving.
Yeah.
Unless the parachute doesn't work.
Right, yeah. It could go real bad.
When's the last time we heard about that happening, though?
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's getting safer and safer.
That's a good point. Yeah, safer and safer to jump out of planes. I have yet to. Is that something either of y'all have done?
I have not done it. I thought about it in my 20s, and I came close a couple times, but I have never done it.
I know there's a place in San Marcos that I've had friends that did it. They went without me, and I pretended to be offended. You didn't invite me? Like, you don't like heights? That's an excellent point.
Yeah,
That's an excellent point.
save your credibility. The thing about skydiving, I don't want to be like, if I was ever going to skydive, I couldn't just go as the like first time tandem. Like,
No.
Oh yeah, I want my own.
yeah, that looks terrible.
It
And
does,
when I
yeah.
think of skydiving, about the fun part, it would be actually floating and being able to
Right.
move around.
Which one were you? The middle.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think that's such a hobby that would require just dedication to get to that level that I don't even want to dip my toes in to even get started.
So
That's fair.
no skydiving for Sam, and apparently for either one of us, Shannon.
I
looks really
think I'd
fun.
do it, but you'd probably have to push me out of the plane once I got up there. That concludes our Salty Shakedown today. I do want to mention this talk yesterday. JJ Watt will wear number 99. He announced that on his Twitter with great honor. And they also announced that Arizona really recruited him. He had never really been recruited before because he was only a 2-star, right? He was a walk-on, and then he gets drafted by the Texans. So this was the first time he was actually recruited. Arizona pulling out all the stops, had Blake Shelton make a video, reach out to him. He's apparently an avid Arizona Cardinals fan. JJ had his presser yesterday. He said he is really happy with his decision. And he said he had his brother's friend order a bunch of shirts from the different teams that were still in running so that he could eventually make that post team where he was working on that Arizona Cardinal shirt.
And I'm glad he's wearing 99. JJ Watt wearing anything other than 99 wouldn't be right. So I think that's cool. I like him. I've always liked him. I hope he does very, very well with Arizona. But I hope it's the Cowboys that win a Super Bowl here pretty quickly. I won't hold my breath. Coming up, Bill Schoening, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs. We'll talk Spurs, NBA, Longhorns, and whatever else is on Bill Schoening's mind next. Thanks for hanging out. It's the Chris Duel Show. All right. Gordon Weedman, who owns a record store. Gordon, sorry it took me a while to get to your comment here. If you want to come into my stores and shop, then you must wear a mask. If you do not wear a mask, then you will not be allowed to shop in my store. It's that simple. Amen, Gordon. You're a responsible business owner who believes in science and medicine, and you're trying to save people's lives, including your employees. Armando Herrera says, never jump out of a perfectly good plane. I understand that. All right. Going to heat up the remnants of my coffee here. I'll be right back. And I will wear a mask. Take that, Greg Abbott. Woo!
Safe gun storage is the duty of every gun owner. Just follow these 3 steps. 1. Store firearms unloaded and secured using a storage device. 2. Store and lock ammunition safely. 3. Keep others from getting access at all times. There is a safe gun storage option for every budget. To learn more about safely storing firearms, for more information. Let's keep them safe, Texas. Brought to you by the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Finding your taxes with Tax Act can feel like a tax explosion. That's because Tax Act helps you get your maximum refund guaranteed. And Tax Act costs up to 30% less than TurboTax, which means more pay. So if you want a tax explosion of your own, switch to Tax Act. File for less, get more. Start for free at taxact.com. 30% less claim based on comparison with TurboTax federal pricing for self-employed consumer online products on March 1st, 2029. Switching to farm. Taxact.com. iHeartRadio with the latest info about slowing the spread. The administration has given the green light to Johnson & Johnson's vaccine in its phase 4 all. Johnson & Johnson is committed to ensuring the clinical trials of strongly underrepresented communities. Johnson & Johnson has a deal with the federal government to supply 100 million doses of its vaccine by the end of June.
Everything you need to know at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Live from the Bud Light Studios, we are AM 1300, 103.1 FM Minnesota, KBEC AM, KBEC HD2, K276EL. Good morning, folks. Morning, Jason and Dana. Morning. Here we are. Another day, another jam-packed show. If you'd like to watch, Peacock. I like to say Peacock. If you want to listen later, download the podcast. Download. But right now, 3 hours. Live of the best sports talk on the air. Welcome to the Dan Patrick Show. I just know one thing. I'm going to work my ass off. Make you proud. Bringing you the biggest, best, and best interviews in sports. Dan Bentley, the sports columnist, radio host of everything. Anybody have any inkling that Arizona was on the radar for this? A lot of teams, and we just didn't think it was stopping for a long time. Like DJ Watt.
Wow, Leo Zambrano, our new motto, welcome to Texas, the death state.
Ouch.
Yeah, Armando Herrera, Kyle Rudolph, yes, released from the Vikings. That's a big story. John Williams, no shoes, no shirts, no masks, no service. Amen, John. Hopefully business owners like Gordon Weidman will take responsibility since our governor isn't. Yeah, I hear the Vikings will save $5 million against the salary cap by cutting Kyle Rudolph. So that's a big deal for them.
Or your social security number, but then they disappear with your money. So how do you spot the scammers? Easy. Research them online, make sure they're licensed and insured, and never prepay or give any personal information. .com/safe recovery for smart tips on avoiding scams. That's hippo.com/safe recovery.
License number N1851, CACLB 3666. When you're forced to stand there naked, begging your morning shower water to finally get warm, then the time has come when you fear running out of hot water while you're still taking your shower. The time has come, and when you do run out of hot water.
Hey, Chris, do you have to dip today?
Ideally, yes. What do you need?
Okay. I just want to know if you want to talk 5-10 minutes after, just to chat.
Yeah, can we do that tomorrow? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
if you have something, we can either that or because I've got an appointment We could do a phone, and I could talk to you from the car.
Well, starting at 9, I've got to do the water thing.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Okay.
if you got to run, we'll just do it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I'll plan on that for tomorrow if that's cool. Bill Schoening coming up. Dean Stone, good morning. Leo, Armando, John, Chris, Gordon, Anthony, Eddie, Carl, anybody else who's in here, welcome in. Well, Ralph Balderas, whose family went through it with COVID, writes this. Another note I forgot to mention, my family stayed home. I did all the shopping. They got COVID. I tested negative the whole time. You may never get it, but you might pass it on. That's another huge, awful component of this virus. Ralph, I appreciate your sharing that with us. Thanks, sir. Yolanda, welcome in. Santos, welcome. Good morning. Barney Segura, welcome. Bill Schoening joining us. Here we go.
This is the Chris Duel Show.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side, yeah.
Now, Chris Duel.
Midway through the week, it is all gravy. It is all downhill from here for you. It is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. Thanks for being with us. It is the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Sam Freese is your soundscape stylist. And every Wednesday at this time, and I especially appreciate it after a game night because he works late into the night doing the Spurs broadcast, doing post-game, and then is kind enough to join us early in the morning. The voice of the San Antonio Spurs, the one, the only, Bill Schoening. Bill, welcome back in.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, crowd. I appreciate the crowd noise there. We've learned to appreciate fake crowd noise this year during COVID with the remote broadcast sometimes coming from an arena that has no fans there, and then we have the ambient noise.
Well,
thank you very much.
And as you mentioned, Bill, it's been so strange. I imagine for you, and on the TV side for Bill Land, for Sean Elliott on Spurs TV, with no fans. But as you know, and we've been talking about, fans beginning March 12th going to come into the AT&T Center. I'm hearing somewhere around 3,200 fans. In fact, I think even tomorrow night, the Spurs are going to honor 1,000 first responders at the AT&T Center. Now, I know 1,000 fans or 3,200 fans, comparatively speaking, compared to a full AT&T Center, when in a normal year we're used to that. It doesn't seem like a lot, but I wonder what as we've discussed, home court advantage has been kind of off this year with no fans. What do you think it's going to be like with 3,200 fans in there? Do you think that's going to make a difference?
I would think that it would be a little bit different. It's just going to be strange because I don't think any of us have been through this before. So seeing a crowd of 3,200 in an arena that seats 19,000, it's just going to be very, very different. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing some fans. You know, what's really strange, Chris, is when we remotely broadcast these games and the arena is completely empty except for the broadcasters. I mean, there's nobody around, no ushers, nobody at all. And the only good advantage to that is that you can make a quick bathroom break, get back real quickly. Our producer, Mike Bartlett, I'll say, Mike, how much time we got? And normally if there's 18,000 fans in the stands, I can't make a real quick bathroom run during the game. I got to wait till halftime. But anyway, maybe that's too much information, but the fact that there's nobody around, that's the only advantage really to it. I like having the fans around. I like visiting with the fans during the games, and hopefully everybody will still, wear their masks and be socially distant. I know the Spurs are very, very emphatic about making sure that everybody still emphasizes the safety part of all this. But I love the fact that the 1,000 responders will be there, the first responders tomorrow night to honor them. And then that'll give the chance for the staff a little bit at the arena to have kind of almost like a dry rehearsal, like a little walkthrough before more and more fans come in later.
Bill, we've talked about it all season, just how great teams have been on the road, in part because there's really no home court advantage without any fans. Will the Spurs start to get some of that back? I know it's only 3,200, but that's a lot better than the nothing that they've been playing in front.
Yeah, I would think so. Last night they had a very strong performance for a home game with no fans in there. So I think it's really more, Shannon, about the chemistry of the team right now. I don't think they're worried too much about how many fans are in the stands. I think it will help to answer your question. But I think right now it's about coming together. And even though they're still shorthanded, I thought last night was one of the best performances of the year.
Yeah, and for people just tuning in, the Spurs win big over the New York Knicks last night, 119-93. And Bill, it was the second night of a back-to-back, which is significant because before last night, the Spurs had not won on the second night of a back-to-back. And what I brought up to you on the broadcast last night, I'm so impressed that during this phase, when the Spurs have been so shorthanded, they've had a number of players out with COVID protocols for a while. DeMar DeRozan was out because his father passed away, so DeMar was with family in the Los Angeles area. Last night, there was no LaMarcus Aldridge yet. In all of these games, when the Spurs are so shorthanded, they've been right there. I mean, at Oklahoma City, that was there for the taking. They were in it to the very end. 2 nights ago against the Brooklyn Nets, they go to overtime against a red-hot Brooklyn Nets team. They beat New Orleans. They beat the New York Knicks. Even with kind of a next man up, almost a skeleton crew, this Spurs team has been playing very, very good basketball.
Yeah, their depth has really been showing during all of this. And they're still without several key rotation players. You mentioned LaMarcus Aldridge out, of course, Devin Vassell and Derek White and Rudy Gay, all important members of this ball club, still not quite available yet. Yet they had 55 bench points last night without those players. And that was also with DeMar DeRozan only scoring 10 points in the starting lineup. DeMar did a great job last night dishing the ball, 11 assists. He only took 5 shots, played the role of distributor last night. That's 3 straight games, by the way, for DeMar DeRozan with 11 assists, which is a season high. So he has really embraced that role of getting others involved. But talking about the bench guys, score 55 points against, this is the bench now, against the Knicks team that came in number 1 in the league in points allowed, number 1 in the league in field goal percentage defense. The Spurs hit 18 threes last night. They dished out 31 assists. They had a huge second half. They scored 36 in the third and 32 in the fourth. So I really like what I saw last night offensively from the Spurs. And their defense stepped up when they needed to as well, as the Knicks only shot 41%. So really a solid victory last night. And now I'm sure they'd like to finish off this part of the schedule with a home victory over the Oklahoma City Thunder tomorrow night. And that'll, really make them feel good, I think, going into the All-Star break.
Bill, I have to ask you this because I thought this was really strange news when it came out yesterday that the Rockets plan on retiring James Harden's number 13. He's the 11th player in franchise history to wear it. He will be the last. The Nets, of course, play Houston tonight in Houston. It's his homecoming. He's hoping that the fans treat him well. But is that a weird thing? I mean, he's still playing in the league. He just left. He didn't really leave on great terms. Is it too soon?
Maybe it was just an olive branch on the part of the Rockets to thank James for his service during his time with the team. Number 13 is not a number other than Will Chamberlain that a lot of people wear. And James Silas, I would get corrected very quickly by Chris Duel if I didn't mention Captain Late, James Silas, whose number 13 hangs the rafters at the AT&T Center. I think the timing is a little bit weird. I think maybe it was done in a way to kind of, like I said, extend the olive branch to James, say there's no hard feelings. But obviously the Rockets are not the same team without him.
You know, Bill, you mentioned Wilt Chamberlain, and yesterday was the anniversary of Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. I believe it was in '62. And then today in sports history, on this day in 1966, for your team that you grew up appreciating, the Philadelphia 76ers, Wilt scored 62 points and had 37 rebounds on this day in 1966 as the 76ers beat the San Francisco Warriors 135 to 125. I can't even imagine, Bill, that Wilt Chamberlain was able to do what he did back in the day.
Yeah, he was a dominant player, and I got a chance to watch him when I was a little kid, and he was larger than life. He grew up in a neighborhood adjacent to mine. He literally grew up about 3 miles from where I grew up, and he went to Overbrook High, which is the same high school that produced Will Smith, the actor, Malik Rose, who, of course, played for the Spurs for a number of years, Walt Hazard, who played at UCLA and then went on to an NBA career. A lot of great high school players went on to college and to the pros out of that program. A guy named Wally Jones, who was on that same 76ers team that you mentioned, a longtime executive with the Miami Heat, also went to Overbrook High. So Mike Gale, the late Mike Gale, who, of course, played for the Spurs, was an Overbrook High guy. So that's a public school in West Philadelphia. So obviously a rich tradition there. But Will Chamberlain, his eye-popping numbers are incredible. You see these guys that have 50-point games. They pale in comparison because Will averaged 51 year. And the most amazing thing to me is that if you score 40 one night, you got to get 60 the next night to keep your average if you're averaging 50, right? So that's kind of mind-boggling. And he also averaged 27 rebounds one year. So and he never came out of the game. So he never fouled out. He would often play 48 minutes. He's just an incredible athlete, Will Chamberlain.
Do you think he ever had any back issues for carrying that team?
You know, it's funny, that 66, 67 team that finally dethroned the Celtics. The Celtics had won all those titles in a row. That was a really good ball club, and they had consistently given the Celtics a hard time, but Boston always came out on top until that season. But they also had some very good players on that team. I mentioned Wally Jones, but they had a guy named Hal Greer, who was a really good outside shooter and a very good guard. Billy Cunningham, who went on to coach the Sixers, was an excellent sixth man on that ball club out of North Carolina, played for Dean Smith at Carolina. So there were a lot of good players there on that Sixers team, and they finally got past the Boston Celtics, which were obviously a dynasty back in the 60s.
He's the voice of the San Antonio Spurs, Bill Schoening, joining us. Bill, you talk about a Wilt Chamberlain who obviously, back in the day, if you're going to average 50 points, you're playing most of the games. You're playing most of the minutes in the games. I saw a story this morning that LeBron James is going to sit out his first game of the year. A lot of people this year have been talking about LeBron James at age 36 and all the minutes he's playing. And it's so interesting in an era of load management when a lot of players will take time off. And, you can almost point to the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich as being kind of the pioneers of load management originally. But, LeBron James now being criticized for playing too many minutes. I just find that kind of interesting. How do you feel about LeBron James and all the minutes he's playing this year?
Well, LeBron is LeBron, and he wants to play. And I think that he also has Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record in mind. I think he wants to keep playing and get the all-time scoring list, number one. I think he wants to do that. I think he wants to be considered for MVP. I think those things are important to him. But the most important thing for him, I think, is to win another championship. And I think maybe he needs to think about that for a minute, because obviously at the age of 36, even though he's still phenomenal and a great athlete, your body does slow down a little bit. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to recover from little, bumps and bruises. So, taking a night off on occasion is not a bad idea for a guy that's 36 years old and playing the heavy minutes and carrying the heavy load that he's carrying right now, especially without Anthony Davis in the lineup.
And the big debate, Bill, among basketball fans is, Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. And a lot of people, point to Michael Jordan, obviously, because of the 6 championships and 6-0 in the finals. But for LeBron James to do it with multiple teams, to do it with the Miami Heat, with the Cleveland Cavaliers, to win a title with the Los Angeles Lakers, I have a feeling, the debate, the winner of that debate will always be Michael Jordan. But LeBron James, you add it all together, and, he started so young, coming right out of high school, and now being 36. I think whenever he does walk away, I think we're going to look back and say that was a pretty darn phenomenal career LeBron James had in the NBA.
Yeah, these GOAT arguments sometimes get a little bit old, because I think I'd rather wait until the guy's career is over and LeBron is still playing. So, once it's all said and done, then you can maybe sit down and compare Michael's career to LeBron's career. But I think it's still a work in progress. I mean, I think the guy's going to keep playing for a while. I think he still has a passion for the game, and he still wants to try to, accomplish some more things in the game. So I would hesitate to, compare him right now to anybody until his career is over, and then you can finally look at it. It's so funny because I hear national talk shows all the time talking about the great players, and I very, very rarely hear Tim Duncan, who's got 5 championships. And, maybe it's because the Spurs are tucked away in South Texas, and the Spurs never pounded their chest during all that time. But Tim certainly deserves to be considered one of the top players of all time for all that he accomplished. And you just don't hear that name come off the tip of the tongue when the national people talk about the great players of all time.
Huge point. We certainly appreciate you reminding us all about the great Tim Duncan. He is the voice of the San Antonio Spurs. Bill Schoening. Bill, from a player perhaps approaching the twilight of his career, LeBron James, to a new emerging star in the NBA, Zion Williamson. Shannon was talking to us earlier in the show. Zion Williamson now has his own signature Nike shoe that is dropping, and he signed a $75 million contract, a shoe contract with Nike. You've been the voice of the Spurs for 20 years. Before that, the voice of the Texas Longhorns. I still can't wrap my head around these shoe contracts. And I imagine if Nike's going to give $75 million to Zion Williamson, they're obviously making a profit. They're making money from that association. Are you amazed at the shoe market and such a big deal that the shoe market has become?
It really is amazing, isn't it? And it's not just in the States. These are international marketing efforts. So Zion, I would not be surprised at some point if he flies to Japan or flies to China, somewhere in Asia, somewhere in Europe, and does kind of a marketing campaign for his shoe. And a bunch of kids will come out, and a bunch of people will pay a lot of money. Tony Parker has a really good shoe deal with a company called Peak. And I know that Tony's done a lot of international marketing, and his shoe is very popular. So a lot of the name players have this deal going on now, and it's a great way to add to their coffers, no question about it. But, Zion is a very unique player. He's only in his 2nd season, and if he stays healthy, he's quite a load. There's no question about the fact that he's a guy that gets a lot of attention. And even though the Spurs are ahead of the Pelicans in the standings, New Orleans tends to get more national TV appearances because of Zion Williamson. Sometimes when the national folks look at who they're going to put on national TV, they don't look at the teams and how the team's doing. They look for that star appeal. And obviously they feel like Zion Williamson is a star.
Well, that's a great segue from me, Bill, because speaking of national TV, Texas last night, of course, still ranked pretty high in the country, but they played an unranked Iowa State last night. That was on ESPN Plus, so not even on cable network, meaning most people weren't even able to get the game. Texas just seems to be falling, even though they finally did get the W last night. But of course, that game they're supposed to win. They have 2 games left on the regular season before heading into the Big 12 tournament, followed by March Madness. Where do you think they sit right now? How far does Shaka need to run this team in the tournament in order to maybe keep his job if it's not already in question right now?
Well, I think that the 3 guards run that show. So if those guys are on, they've got a chance to win. But if they're off, they struggle sometimes. So I think it's a very oversimplification of the whole deal. Obviously, they got to play good team defense. Their bench has to play well when they're called upon. I didn't get a chance, obviously, to watch last night's game since I had my own. But I think he's going to be judged, Shaka Smart and the program, on their postseason success in the conference tournament and especially in the NCAA tournament. So we'll have to just kind of wait and see. Speaking of Longhorns, by the way, I'm going to work a Longhorn baseball game tonight, but I'm going to work for the other side. The Texas baseball team is playing Texas State, and I've been invited to do the play-by-play tonight for Texas State in the game in San Marcos. It'll be my first Longhorn broadcast since the Holiday Bowl in 2001.
Wow.
When Major Applewhite led the Longhorns to a comeback victory over the Washington Huskies. So, on I think it was December 31st, 2001. That's the last time I called a Longhorn game in any sport. So I'm going to get to call a Longhorn baseball game tonight. But again, I'll be working for the Texas State Bobcats.
That is so cool. And as a reminder for our listeners, when you left the Longhorns, you went on to the San Antonio Spurs, and this is year number 20 for Bill Schoening as the voice of the San Antonio Spurs. Finally, Bill, over the years, just kind of follow you on social media, in the off season and sometimes during the All-Star break, you have taken some cool vacations. You go and visit exotic locations, either in the United States or around the world. During the All-Star break, like you, it's a chance for me to get away. I'm going to go this next week to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and kind of just chill a little bit. How about you? Any plans? What are you going to do during the All-Star break?
Well, during the break, Chris, let's talk because I went to Santa Fe last summer and absolutely loved it. There's some really, really cool stuff in that area in Santa Fe. So let's chat about that. But
absolutely,
we're just going to do a little hill country deal. A couple days over in Kerrville, right out to Garner State Park, do some hiking there. So it's more of a laid back type vacation. Obviously, with COVID going on, we didn't want to hop on a plane, and it's a shorter break this time, only 5 days. So we're just going to run over to the Texas Hill Country for a few days, do some hiking, and hang out in Kerrville there in the Hill Country. I haven't spent a lot of time there. There's a folk festival there every year. I've gone to see some cool things over there at the Kerrville Folk Festival. Really haven't spent a lot of time in the town. And again, we're going to run out, make an hour drive west of there out to Garner State Park, a place I haven't been, but I hear it's really pretty out there.
Now, Bill, only because I'm a Rain Man freak on solar eclipses on April 8th, 2024, you want to be in Kerrville because the center path of a total eclipse of the sun is going to run over Kerrville, Texas. So you're going to make your plans April 8th, 2024, in case you want to plan ahead, maybe book a cool bed and breakfast.
Okay, I wrote it down. I have no idea where the Spurs will be on April 8th, 2024, but if they're not playing, maybe I'll be in Kerrville to watch the total eclipse of the sun. That sounds like a song.
Exactly. We'll have to play some Pink Floyd, so we'll get that going. Bill Schoening, always outstanding, sir. We will see you on the radio tomorrow night as the Spurs take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Always a pleasure, always fun, Bill. Have yourself a great Wednesday.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Shannon.
All right, Bill Schoening. Great guy, great broadcaster in his 20th year as the voice of the San Antonio Spurs. As we roll forward, we will revisit the poll question. And for those of you who weren't with us in the 6 o'clock hour, it is a big story. The Eyes of Texas controversy continuing to rear its head on the 40 acres. We'll talk about that with Shannon, with Sam Freese. And we'll see what else is popping in the world of sports that you should be aware of. We're with you till 9 o'clock this morning. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's the Chris Duel Show.
Woo! Woo!
Yeah, if you haven't, now some people will say, "Oh, I've seen an eclipse." Unless you're in the shadow, unless you're in 100% totality, you have not seen a total solar eclipse. Day turns to night. The stars come out at midday. The temperature drops about 10 degrees. It is like I've seen 2 of them in my life. 1991 in Mexico, 2017 in Tennessee, and it coming to Texas in 2024.
It's blowing my mind that you just had that
enough.
date. What day of the week is that?
That's a good question. See, I should know that. I should be a
How
total
convenient
Rain
is
Man
that?
freak on that. I'll have to look that up.
Let's see.
Whatever day it is, I'm taking off. I'm going to be there. Let's see. John Williams wants me to check my messenger.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday. All right. It'll be
Is
an
that
extended
Monday
weekend.
morning or is that Monday night going into Tuesday? Or is that a Monday thing?
They typically happen like midday. They typically happen when the sun is at its highest point.
Gotcha.
And what people don't fully, I think San Antonio is going to get like 98% of the eclipse on that day, and it's completely 1% of sunshine. The sun is 10,000 times brighter than the total eclipse. So you can't, there's going to be people in San Antonio going, hey, we're going to get 98% of it. It's a completely different experience. You got to be in the shadow. All right. One more segment. So I figure we'll revisit, for people who might not have been listening in the 6, we'll revisit the Eyes of Texas, and let's see if there's anything else.
If we want to drop Dak in there, I mean, basically the news is that there's no news, but they are still talking and the conversations are deepening. But there's no word on what those conversations are detail-wise. As, 6 days out.
Okay. Somebody named Brian Mayenberg says, y'all talking about racism, isn't it just as bad to label a white person Karen or Ken? I mean, if it went the opposite way, there would be an uproar.
Karens and Kens have no race associated with them. It's just a name.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I don't think a white woman named, who we call Karen, or a white guy who we call Ken has faced nearly the oppression of people of color over the years. So yeah. Yeah. I love it when white people go, yeah, but what about calling white people Karen and Ken? Yeah, Brian, you've had a real rough life, brother. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully Greg McDermott won't use Karen or Ken in any of his post-game pep talks. Have to apologize for it.
So it looks like Ticket, y'all just tweeted y'all are having a water drive-through today as well from 11 to noon.
See, no, I've gotten no. When you asked me about that yesterday, I've received no information on that.
Yeah, I only knew because Jason drove the water down, so it's all the same other than location.
Okay.
Same water. So if you want me to, I have the copy.
Okay, so do you have the information on that, Sam? Well, no, because what I was going to do, because we haven't talked about it much, I was going to have Shannon mention the Austin thing, and then you, if you have the information, then you tell us about the San Antonio thing. Ah, okay.
You could read the tweet that Ticket just sent out verbatim, and that should suffice.
Okay. Okay. So you don't think we should, so if I have Shannon mention Austin, you don't think we should then piggyback with the San Antonio one? I'll follow your lead on that. That's true. Okay, I got you. So in other words, you'll promote it on Taylor. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Well,
so
you
Shannon,
can't promote it on Taylor. It's today from 11 to noon in San Antonio.
Yeah, but he feels that there might be competing sales conflict. So
y'all have a sponsor?
And he says they have been promoting it on Taylor for the last several days. So I'm going to follow his lead on that, but I do want you, I think it makes sense for you here, and we'll do it out of the gate so that we don't run out of time. We'll promote the Austin one with you here first before we dive into something else. So, okay. Welcome back into the Chris Duel Show. Final half hour as we take you to 9 o'clock this morning. I'm Chris, along with Shannon Salty Sweeney and Sam Freese, your soundscape stylist, the hardest working man in sports talk radio, pulling a triple shift today. Sam doing this show, and then later today, 2 o'clock sports grind on Ticket 760 in San Antonio, followed by the Mike Taylor Show. And both Ticket 760 and AM 1300 The Zone doing a lot of good things involving water today. And I know water is an issue for a lot of people in South and Central Texas. And Shannon, you've been talking about what's coming up in Austin today. And is it 11 o'clock this morning? What time does this begin?
Yeah, 11 o'clock this morning from 11 to noon. Come out, see us, iHeart Austin at 3601 South Congress Avenue. Just drive by, pull up your trunk. We'll load in a case of Mananalu water, which is, of course, Jason Moma's brand. It's really awesome. It comes in aluminum cans, so those cans can get recycled, and then 60 days later, they're back on the shelves. We know people are still struggling to get clean water because of the effects of the Texas storm, so we've got you covered. iHeart Austin, 11 to noon today.
Very, very cool. And speaking of Austin, and we covered this extensively in the 6 o'clock hour, but I wanted to bring it up again because it is the poll question. It is what motivated our poll question today. Yesterday, the Texas Tribune released a story that included a number of emails that it says are from, among others, Texas alums, some of whom are supposedly big-time donors, and it has to do with the song The Eyes of Texas. And some of those emails are eye-opening and troubling regarding Texas Longhorn football players who have an issue with The Eyes of Texas, the song that dates back to the early 1900s and has roots in minstrel shows. And Shannon, we've been talking about it. I know here in San Antonio, I'm looking at the San Antonio Express News, and on its front page, a double story, one of which is a commentary by columnist Mike Finger, who has covered the Longhorns a lot over the years, and Nick Moyle, who is the beat writer for the San Antonio Express News for the Longhorns now. And you mentioned this, Shannon. This is going to be a big story. There's an investigative panel that has been looking at all of this in Austin and is going to issue a report for the university, I think next week. Is that right?
Yeah, the EYES History Committee will be releasing a set of facts and their findings of the origins of the song, what the song means, what we think it should stand for, so we can all be educated and all with the same information provided all at once. Which I think is great. I'm excited for that to come out.
Yes. Well, and the very end, and Mike Finger makes an interesting point at the very end about, and it is our poll question today, should it be mandatory, should it be required is the term we use, of Texas Longhorn football players to sing the Eyes of Texas. There was certainly some controversy after the Oklahoma game in the Cotton Bowl, when after the game, a number, in fact, I think the majority of Longhorn players did not stay for the song. Sam Ellinger did, notably. But at the very end of his column, Mike Finger writes this in the San Antonio Express News today. He says, singing the Eyes of Texas isn't mandatory for Texas business majors or engineering students. There's no reason it should be mandatory for football players who, by the way, aren't stopping it from being played and aren't keeping a single donor or alumnus from belting it out after every game until Gabriel blows his horn. The players aren't trying to impose their will on anyone else. The people who sent those emails are, and one way or another, Texas is going to show which side it really rejects. And Shannon, in this column, he talks about this report that is coming out next week, and Mike Fingers seems to say, if the report says, oh, there's no problem with the song, he's concerned there might be kind of a whitewashing in this report. So it's going to be interesting to see what the report says, and after it says whatever it says, how both alums and players and students react to this report.
I don't know the details of who all is on the committee, but I would think and would almost assure that they have a well-rounded group of people who are working on this. And that mentioned in the column that they don't make business or engineers, like they obviously not, they don't play the Eyes of Texas to start class every day. It's not like elementary school when first thing in the morning everyone has to say the Pledge of Allegiance. It's not like that. And I want to go back to that Sam moment because that became so divisive. And the truth is, we were in a year of COVID. There were less fans. The band did not travel. The band was not there at games at all this year. So anytime the song was played, it was played over the sound system. And it was not consistent as to when that song was played, especially on road games, right? And that picture, I believe, was from the OU game at the Cotton Bowl. And Texas, I believe, was the away team, which means they would be last anyway for playing their songs. Sam happened to still be there on the field because he had to do press after that game, and he went to see the students who did show up for that game, who could get in. So he happened to be there, and his choice was to stand and raise his horns and sing the Eyes of Texas. And that picture speaks 1,000 words, but that doesn't mean that those 1,000 words are correct. And that became so much more divisive than anyone ever intended, because there were players in the locker room that said, hey, I would have been out there had I known it was even going to get played.
Yeah.
And when it was going to get played. I mean, it was so long after the final whistle blew. So I just want to make sure we do have that in mind when it comes to the Eyes of Texas and that Sam Ellinger argument in particular.
Do you have an expectation, Shannon, as an alum and as someone? What's difficult about this is, for decades and decades and decades, I think a lot of people sang this song without knowledge of the roots of this song. So, I think a lot of, in the vast majority of Longhorns over the years sang it as a celebration, as an affirmation of what it is to be a Texas Longhorn without finding out subsequently that it had its roots in minstrel shows and therefore is now found to be offensive. But do you have an expectation? Do you think there is some kind of a compromise that can be reached to still show sensitivity to what might be offensive about the roots of the song, yet still somehow find a way to keep it and keep it as a part of the tradition?
I don't know about compromise because there's always going to be people who are upset one way or the other. I think at the end of the day, Texas is going to keep this song. I think the goal right now is to accept that song was originally formed in a way to separate people, right? And it has these racial undertones, and that we all need to accept that is what it is. It's an asterisk on the university. It's not a great look, but at this point, we accept that that's what it was. But we've been singing it for years, and it now has taken on an entirely new meaning, an entirely new translation, and we need to set the tone for what it means going forward, while accepting and addressing when, why, and how it was created to begin with.
Now, Sam Freese came up with an idea during one of the breaks during the show this morning, Sam, and you mentioned this, and I think it's kind of cool. What if you needed to change a song, and you used USC as an example because Snoop Dogg.
That's my high school song.
There you go. Snoop Dogg has been known to hang out along with Will Ferrell over the years on the USC sideline. Why not create a whole new song for a whole new generation of players? Maybe buy a modern day performer, maybe even a rapper. I think that's a pretty cool idea, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had never really thought about it, but I mean, you could regionalize the hell out of it with USC's connection to Snoop. You could have like Pat Green doing Texas Techs. You could have all kinds of different. Not a Pat Green fan.
Wave on wave as they're passing tortillas into the field.
I'm saying maybe create a new one, not necessarily take an old song.
Beyonce.
For what, University of Houston?
No, Texas. She's born in Texas, Jersey. Before we love that picture, Queen Bay.
Hey,
we will.
I rescind my idea. It's a terrible idea.
No.
I
love the Beyonce idea. She could come out and perform it the first time.
Oh, it'd be amazing.
Be a big deal.
This is the worst idea I've ever come up with.
I mean, is there another?
There's so many other Houston rappers. University of Houston can have somebody else. They can have Meg Thee Stallion.
Other than Kinky Friedman, I know Kinky Friedman went to.
I mean, Texas. you want to make the Texas Longhorns fans' heads even bigger. You have a song by Beyonce, the queen of all queens. They'll know that. We don't care what our record is. Yeah, but did you know that Beyonce singer was song?
I was thinking more in terms of modernizing. Because what's a 110-year-old fight song mean to a 17-year-old high school junior that you're recruiting when you're sitting in their living room? It doesn't, like that song has very, very, very little impact on whether they come to your university or not. So if there's even a slight chance that that they would view it in a negative light, why not try to get creative with it and try to get, something that's more modernized, something that is going to excite. Like you said, I mean, if you're telling a 17-year-old kid that Beyonce is going to sing the song that you're going to stand with your teammates and sing after every song, I think they'd be way more excited about that than a song that has a deep-rooted history that's pretty questionable.
You know what the song needs? It needs a TikTok dance to go with it.
Boom.
That'll get everyone in.
So anyway, that story is going to continue. I mean, it really flared up again yesterday, and as Shannon mentions, we'll get the results of that commission, of that study next week, and see what it determines. We'll see what the university does from there. And Shannon, it is our poll question this morning: should the Texas Longhorn football players be required to sing the song "The Eyes of Texas"? Do you have the poll results in front of you?
Yes, sir. Currently, 71% saying no. Players should not be, or should be required to sing the Eyes of Texas with 29% getting yes. Very specific question. Make sure you read the question before you answer it, come after us, whatever. Should Texas Longhorn football players be required to sing Eyes of Texas? 71% say no.
And what say you? Should they be required or should it be optional?
Singing it?
Yeah. If
No.
indeed, if
Because they're
indeed
already not required to sing it, but the whole idea is unity and presence and being there
Yeah.
with the people who came out to support you in the university, win or lose. We are all in this together. A phrase that Mr. McDermott probably should have used the other night.
yeah, we talked about him. By
We're
the
all
way.
in this together. Let's play the school song.
Speaking of
We're gonna have to sing
unity,
it,
though, I mean, historically, with taking a wider scope of history, the places that have required allegiance to create unity, those are not the places that our country, those are the places we fought wars against. Like the idea of required thought to create that unity, I think that's a misnomer to begin with. That's a bad way to try to create unity.
Shannon, any comment to that statement by Mr. Sam Freed?
I think if Beyonce sings the school song, we will all be united across
That's how we
one
create
great nation.
Organic unity
Planet.
right there.
Yeah, I
She
think
can do
Beyonce
no
could.
wrong.
I think Beyonce could create quite a bit of unity among young men between the ages of 18 and
And if we
24.
got a verse from Jay-Z on that song, you got started a petition. Get this going.
It can happen.
Out with the way too old, in with the new, the hot, the now.
And make sure there's a TikTok version.
Yeah. Because and it's really simplified. I tried to TikTok dance the other day. I can't believe I posted it because it's absolutely awful. I can't.
I
just
missed that. I haven't. I don't think I've gone and looked at your
Sad.
TikTok this week,
It
Shannon.
literally was made to be basic for people like me to do it, and I look ridiculous.
And to be clear, to make sure Shannon on TikTok is at Shannon B. Sweeney, just like your Twitter,
Yep, all my socials. That's where you can find me.
Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can find her at Shannon B. Sweeney. Sam Freest is on Twitter at Biggest Puma. Sam, thank you, sir. Always great to work with you.
Always fun, y'all.
I hope Snoop Dogg comes up with a new fight song for USC. That would be very cool. I would totally support that as a USC Trojan. Our thanks to Bill Schoening, the voice of the San Antonio Spurs. Shannon Salty Sweeney, outstanding as always. Thank you for hanging out with us. We'll do this again in 21 hours. Have yourself a great Wednesday. See you later. Thanks, y'all.